I've had a physical experience. And I put a infrared alarm system up 7 feet, and it will only go off at 7 feet. At midnight, ding, my alarm goes off. I'm like going through the ceiling. The dog's sitting up, and something's going around my tent, and it's going, whoosh, whoosh, and you can hear footfall as it's going around my tent. The dog jumps in my face, goes down into the bottom of my mummy bag. I'm scratched up all the pieces. I'm laying there, and it stops behind me. All of a sudden, my tent starts getting pushed in. And then contact on the back of my head. Its palm was at the base of my neck. Its thumb right here. The top of the hand right here, as it's gently manipulating my head, pushing through my tent. So I go, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And it's like, I grabbed my keys from my truck and I broke the alarm system on it. And it backed away.
In June 2019, 7 loggers were working a place called the Wilson River Drainage. And they were in a closed area, which is all gated. The public does not get in at all. They were working with 2 very loud pieces of machinery. One was pulling logs up a hill, the other was loading them into trucks. Tremendous noise. One of them stops and says, "Who's that walking down the road towards us?" About 300 yards away, they say a Sasquatch, a BigFoot, was walking down the road in midday. These are working loggers. These are not tourists. None of them had a camera. So the thing walked up to about 200 yards away, stopped, looked at them, turned and walked away. They said it was 7 feet tall at least, 400 to 450 pounds, enormous, dark brown in color, swinging its arms, walking upright, and when it stopped like this with its hands out, looked at them, turned and walked away. We believe these things are nocturnal. So my theory there is that noise of the machinery got it up and moving, and it didn't know where the noise is coming from, which happens with wild animals very often. They can't pinpoint sound. And it started moving, saw the loggers, walked away. They call it a 7-man sighting. I got into the area with great difficulty, got permission, went in there, spent a whole day, found some footprints, great big footprints, in a shallow stream bed nearby. This is 7 down-to-earth loggers with 20 or more years of experience. They're not mistaking something. They knew what they saw.
The way it started for me was my son actually ended up finding a single track deep in the icy mud outside the town of Thurston, Oregon. And I thought, well, maybe it's a hoax, maybe it's legit, but for us, it was a bigger question of what if. You know, I'd always loved a good mystery, and I thought, well, I'll introduce Jude to a really cool mystery. And so it just so happened that one of our neighbors filmed a movie about Bigfoot back in the 70s, loosely based on Patterson Gimlin. And he looked at the photo, which we had the mind to put a scale object next to show size. And he said, you know, it's interesting enough, it could be a hoax, but I know somebody you can talk to. And so I met this river guide, and he ended up telling me after our initial meeting that, you know, not only is Bigfoot real, but I've seen them several times. In fact, they come to my house, which was a whole new phenomena. I had no idea that you could be a witness multiple times and then be an extended experiencer, someone who quite literally has Bigfoot in their own backyard. That right there was really the trigger point for me to meet my first extended experiencer, which Daryl would end up becoming the ultimate extended experiencer.
When I first moved to the house down here below us, I would hear things at night up in these hills right here. It prompted me to look for someone that knew what those sounds might be because they were so strange.
Daryl wanted to meet a local. He had just moved to town, and he didn't really know any locals here that were into such a strange subject or hobby. And so that's when we met, and we hit it off. And so we set up a kind of a date to meet up at his house, and that's when things kind of took off.
My first sighting was Christmas Day 1993. Myself and two nephews went for a drive looking for deer and had the usual 15-second roadside sighting. The thing was balled up in a root mass, stood up and looked at us, thoroughly annoyed. I was only about 20 to 30 feet away and stepped out of the blowdown in 2 steps, which was a feat in itself, and walked into the forest. I told the boys it was a big bear. I didn't even want to really think about it. That was that. The biggest thing is to stay awake at night. Some nights the forest is alive. It generally has to do with phases of the moon. And then we found out that with proper enticements, offerings, occasionally one of these things would come into camp.
Let me show you this map. I'll give you a little bit of background and provenance. Can I just hold it up like this? Yeah, this map was up somewhere around 12 years in the BLM office, Bureau of Land Management office in North Bend, Oregon. And I learned about it from federal and state officials that were conversant in that office. And so they would talk to me about it, and I would say, I'd sure like to see that map. And I kind of got nowhere, but there was one federal official, and I would work sometimes on his plumbing, and finally he sent me a screenshot of it, and this is it. And I think the following year they took it down when they found out that it had been disseminated. This is a collection of, among other things, stories where I am confided in by my plumbing customers in their homes, where they have a Bigfoot story that they would like to tell somebody, but they can't, and everyone understands why. There's a stigma about the whole thing in many circles, and so what I do very purposefully is I let my customers know, because they all know me, I'm their plumber, they've known me for many years. I let them know that I know that the Bigfoot are very real. It's not controversial, or it shouldn't be. Even if in the beginning they'll say, well, no, I don't believe in that stuff. It's the funniest thing. Maybe like a half hour later, as I'm doing their plumbing job and we're conversing, they'll say, well, here's what happened to me. And they'll tell me their story. And I have a whole collection of them in here. Many stories from very, very credible people in this area. Probably, I would say anecdotally, more of my customers have had some kind of a Bigfoot encounter than have had cougar encounters, because it's very rare to see a cougar. There's a family of Bigfoot that has lived for years at the county dump. When the lights go out and the gate is locked and there's no one there at the dump, the Bigfoot come in every night and there's a smorgasbord there, because they're the only animals that can get into the pit and back out. A local historian and cartographer, with considerable effort, gotten a few of the employees at the dump to admit that the Bigfoot are there. This right here is a photograph that was given to me of a trail cam. This is just maybe a half hour from here. It's a family, a very reputable family that owns land all over here, and they're hunters, and so they set out trail cams. And they took this photograph probably, I think, 10 years ago or so, and they never showed it to anybody. And then they decided to entrust it to their plumber. That would be me. And there's a man and woman that I know here in town, and they're pretty well known, great people. They were camping with friends for 4 days on the Elk River. And he sent me a photograph that they got while they were there. He said, we watched this for a while, but it was an obviously a juvenile ape. It looked like an adult chimpanzee that was just hanging out up in a dead old growth tree. You can look at this and think, okay, either it's some sort of a gnarly growth on that tree that looks exactly like a chimpanzee. And he said, we watched it for a while, but he said the thing that was more remarkable was the noises that the apes would make at night. And he said they would make this, this loud gibberish and howling and barks and whistles and just all these noises they would make at night that was rather disconcerting.
This all began for me in 1971 when I was invited into the camp where these guys have been experiencing these horrific sounds around the camp. It was a nightly thing, and I started going up there. 8 miles in the wilderness, a very imposing area in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California. And nobody up there was looking for Bigfoot. It just really wasn't that way. Because we had repeated visits up there, we started taking cassette tape recorders and recording the sounds.
There's 2 of them across the creek at the big rocks.
I spent a career in the Navy as a cryptolinguist, a translator of Russian, Spanish, and Persian. I played it, and I immediately knew. I could hear it, and I was stunned. There's a language here, and that is not a human being. The articulation of the phonemes are virtually the same as humans. They make the same sounds that we do, with about 6 or 7 extra ones that I've never heard a human make in any language. It would be impossible to fake something like this.
According to Dr. Lieberman in 1968 at Brown University, only humans have the apparatus for language like we have. That separates us from all the other animals in the kingdom of this earth. So that tells me something, something pretty significant. If they have the vocal mechanism for language, maybe they're got some human component to them.